is the word in due season. The Lord is calling us to focus on Him. And as we focus on Him, He will strengthen in us. He will strengthen in our minds. He will strengthen in our hearts. And now the adversary diminishes. The more we increase the Lord in our hearts, the more we call upon Him and depend on Him, and we come as babes in suckling, and we nourish for His divine revelation, for His divine knowledge, the more we are aware of the Lord, the more we come to know Him, through the Lord Himself, and not through the teaching of man. But then the Lord will send forth His prophet, His messenger, His Son of Man, that the Lord will visit us Him, and He will carry the word of the Lord to the people. You see, and this is the expected end, because now we take dominion of the works of His hand, and also I have to keep flicking. We take dominion of the works of His hand, or over the works of Thy hands. Thou hast put all things under His feet. So we become head. We become high-ranking royalties here. You see, and I'm just going to put a little clap on the speaker. Hopefully the speaker is recording here. So I'm talking right now where the Lord wants us to be with Him. Yes, and I'm saying He's calling us to be devotional to Him, to be disciplined in Him, to be dependent on Him, and therefore surrender. But all this takes praying to the Lord. Praying to the Lord and praying from our hearts. So our hearts can't be filled with evil thoughts, adultery, fornication, and murders. And the Lord showed me through the prophet Jeremiah that adultery means idolism, like putting others before Him. The Lord showed me that's what adultery really means. It doesn't mean infidelity in a marriage. Okay, it means when we worship the house, the car, the money, we put all that and not rely on the Spirit of the Lord to see us through. We begin to fuss over the money when we depend on the Lord, and He will bring our provisions to pass. So we're not to have fornication. Now that might be infidelity, yes, and murderers, but then still there's another word to fornication, and thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lavishness, an evil eye, blasphemy, proud, foolishness. The evil eye, we have a bad thought, or we think in a negative way towards a person, and we can put it in the spiritual vision, and it may actually come out as divination. It may actually play out on that person. It may go up into the heavens, into the lower heavens, and the spiritual realm, and stop that person. You see, that's what an evil eye is. So the Lord is saying that to come into my purity, to come into my love, that your heart is not to be filled with any of these issues. You're not to wrongfully impede a person in the spiritual realm. Blasphemy, we're not to curse at the Lord. Okay? Pride, we don't want to receive correction. Foolishness, that means not acknowledging the Lord. It says that the one who does not acknowledge the Lord, it says he's a fool. Yes? So, and all these evil things come from within and defile the man. Yes? So they're not heavenly. They're earthly sins. Okay? So, as I said, Hannah, she may have been praying with covetousness, wanting something and not having it, and yet the other person had it. She may have had some pride, not wanting to be corrected, though they went to Shiloh and they made their sacrificial offer and their atonement with the Lord. She didn't give in and gave it all to the Lord. It took a while for that to happen. And so maybe there was some foolishness in it, and maybe some deceit as well, because she may feel a little upset with her husband, that though he does show her a greater love, but it's also causing, and he's probably showing her that love more so because she's not having children, her womb has been shut up. So he's trying to make her feel loved and cherished, and and that I love you, even I love you as you are, whether you have children for me or not. And in what came to my mind is, okay, but you have children, husband, you have children. You haven't got the children here, but you got the children there, so you have children, and there I am without children. So she must have had some deceit with her husband, because she's probably playing up to his nicety to her, but in her mind, deeper mind, she's upset with him because he has other children, though not with her. So Hannah would have been down on her knees especially when they went to their sacrificial meetings in Shiloh, and she'd be praying to the Lord, but in her heart, she was not pleased. In her heart, she was covetous. She was deceit, okay, and even foolishness, because she's denying the Lord true access to her. She's defiling herself, and I even like to say even evil thoughts, because she doesn't know the heavens. She doesn't know that the Lord desires for her to become a priest or a prophet, that she can take dominions over the works of his hands, and thou hast put all things under his feet. So she can be the head and not the tail. She can conquer. She can have her heart's desire once she is in acknowledging the Lord first. You see, once it's there. So eventually, the good news is that eventually Hannah succumbed. She got to the realization that she had to give all to the Lord. She had to pray for a pure heart. And in that pure heart was pure love. And then she had to surrender all and pray that the Lord will enable her to surrender. She said, yes, and she had to pray into her soul. And that spirit, that sorrowful spirit that she had, the unclean spirit. In other words, now I'm going to get a little bit complicated, because this is not the way that the church preaches or ministers. But in other words, by going deep within and truly focusing on the Lord, Hannah had that shift from the tomb consciousness or the lower consciousness into the higher consciousness, into the higher awareness of the Lord. And can I tell you that in the higher consciousness, there's more energy to the mind, and so there's more production of the mind than when we're in the lower consciousness, in the lower mind, and there is very little production in knowing the heavens, knowing the Lord. And this is what I call the climate change. This is what Joycelyn Linton, coming into the higher calling, call the climate change, because we have to change climate. We have to go from heat to divine supreme energies. You see, we come into the energies of where the angels dwell. You see, and now we're like Daniel and the lions. We take dominion over the works of the Lord's hand, the animals and the beasts that he took from the ground, you see. So this is the times that we're in, that the Lord is calling us to come higher into him. He's calling us to have that soul devotion to him, to have that oneness with him, and that all present and that all power with him. He's calling us to come into his knowledge, to know him more, and therefore to listen to his teaching. And the Lord will use his prophets, and he has assigned prophets or messengers that hears his voice and therefore can relay the teaching to the people. And this is another prayer, to pray to the Lord to bring us in the way of his messengers, his teachers, his preachers, so we can get to know him, you see. And we're not to be prideful over it. We're not to be covetousness or envy, nor are we to project evil eye on the people because they are hearing the voice of the Lord. Because this is where we surrender to the Lord, because he knows. The Lord knows why Peninnah was having sons and daughters for Elkanah and why Hannah wasn't. He knows why, and it doesn't explain it. When we read the book of Samuel, it does not explain why Elkanah had two wives. One bare children for him and the other didn't. For now, till Hannah surrendered totally to the Lord, then she bare the son, the prophet Samuel, and then she bare 7 more children. You see, so Elkanah had quite a tribe of children there. However, why did Hannah have a delay? And the Lord has shown me this some time back with the story of Jacob and the first wife Leah and Rebecca. You see, but I won't talk about this for now. You see, so how do we address this? Do we need to petition the Lord and say, well, Lord, why is it that Peninnah had children and Hannah delayed? Do we put a judgment on Hannah and say, well, she must have done something. Maybe she was too defiled from the inside. But if we look at the situation, was Peninnah then devotional to the Lord? And I wouldn't say so, because Peninnah is now referred to as an adversary, and her adversary also provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. So Peninnah, she was concerned that her husband was given a lot of love to his other wife, and more so because she didn't have children. And so she decided to taunt her the other wife, and that's not coming from the Lord. You see, that's not. She should be in gratitude. I would say, that's from my point of view, that she has bare children, but she's looking and seeing in her mind, he's giving his other wife more love than me. Yes, he's giving her more love. So she is at a loss in herself. She's at a deficiency. That could not be of the Lord. Because when we are in the Lord, we are at rest. We are at peace. So there is a difference between Peninnah and Hannah. Because now, as we read that Hannah prayed deep within, it says, Allah answered her, and he says, count not thine handmaid for a daughter of Beli, for out of the abundance of my complaint and grief have I spoken hitherto. Then Eli answered and said, go in peace, and the God of Israel grant thee thy petition that thou hast asked of him. And she said, let thine handmaid find grace in thy sight. So the woman went her way and did eat, and her countenance was no more sad. Okay, so the priest passed on the word of peace to her. So now Hannah comes into peace. She rests in the peace of the Lord. And in that peace, she's able to eat. And I'm saying that eating in the scriptures means knowledge. See, Jesus fed the 5,000. Jesus gave knowledge to the 5,000, right? Using the bread and the fish. And that has another meaning to it, which I won't talk about right now. So when the peace of the Lord rested on Hannah, now she began to get divine revelation or divine knowledge. You see, and this is what the Lord wants of us. So there's a difference between the peace of Peninnah, and the peace of Hannah. The Lord was calling Hannah. It didn't seem as though he was calling Peninnah, but he was definitely calling Hannah. And the way the Lord caused Hannah was he deprived her of her motherhood. He shut her womb. It says here that and her adversary also provoked her. That's verse 6 of chapter 1. So, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. The Lord had shut up her womb, you see. So I'd like to say that the Lord was calling Hannah. And maybe she was not answering the call. You had many a call and few are chosen. The story, it leaves a lot of mystery to it. It goes directly into a tale. It tells us a tale. And it leaves many mystery for us to fathom out, you see. But I am suggesting that the Lord is calling Hannah. And he shut her womb to draw her attention to him. And she had to go through some form of shifting and sifting to become refined, to become